freight trains, black ice, reckless drivers.
Oh, this is going to be bad. Stay hit.
Driving is the most popular method of transportation in the world, but it's also the most dangerous. From red light runners in California
It was like an explosion in the intersection.
to deadly crosswalks in Europe, this is where drivers and pedestrians face their most terrifying moments. On the world's most dangerous roads. Salt Lake City, Utah. This state capital is renowned for its wide open spaces and beautiful scenery. It's the city Utah Highway Patrol Officer Greg Lundell proudly calls home. People here are known for their friendliness, so it's no surprise when Sergeant Lundell stops to help a motorist stranded in a rainstorm on Interstate 15.
You have reference in a tow truck? I just called the closest one.
Road conditions that day were very wet. It had been raining for all of that day, all that night, so it was real wet.
But what happens next is completely unexpected.
Look out, look out, look out, look out! Run!
Antonio Garcia is the stranded driver who barely escapes a grisly death. It's an incident he'll never forget.
You know, just went like real slow motion. It's true what they say about that, you know.
Watch again. Two hydroplaning cars careen out of control.
When I looked up, I saw a white car lose control. It hit a blue pickup truck, and I saw that both of them were headed directly for Antonio and I.
The swerving sedan barely misses Antonio.
I wasn't sure if Antonio would make it through this.
When I turned around, and all I seen was that the driver coming at me and had their mouth wide open, just looking at their window, and then all of a sudden, phew, everything just happened.
Instead of hitting the men, the two vehicles crash into each other.
Holy crap!
Fortunately, no one is injured.
The driver of the sedan was okay. We were real lucky that these crashes had no injuries. Everybody came out okay.
According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, colliding with another car is the most common form of fatal or serious injury on America's roads. And that's something Antonio Garcia is taking to heart.
Nowadays, I strap the seatbelt on all the time now. 'Cause before I didn't used to, but since I got in that accident, you never know what's going to happen, so I always put that seatbelt on now.
For Sergeant Lundell, this brush with death has deepened his belief in a higher power.
I think I survived this accident because I'm really lucky. There's someone watching over me. I've got a wonderful family, and with lots of prayers, there's definitely some protection in all of that.
St. Paul, Minnesota, with an average snowfall of nearly 4 feet per year, this city offers a steady dose of winter road hazards.
People don't know how to drive Minnesota weather, whether they've been here for 20 years or whether they've been here for a year.
Motorists here are forced to alter their driving habits at the first snowfall.
It's pretty hazardous. There's a lot of crazy drivers as it is, but winter adds to the fun.
But even the most cautious drivers sometimes fall prey to slick roads, especially at the intersection outside the Twin City Music and Video Store on White Bear Avenue.
Oh, there goes another! Watch it, dude!
It's one of the worst in St. Paul, so it's pretty normal that we have a good dozen or so accidents a year on this corner.
Store owner Brian Kraut set up a camera to prove this winter wonderland is actually a slippery slope to disaster.
He's got, even the truck is moving it. Look out! He's gonna get killed. Oh!
He didn't quite see the truck coming down, and we had yelled over. Our reaction was, you better get out of the way.
Watch again. This truck nearly jumps the curb. But believe it or not, the jumping's only just begun.
Everybody that's made that turn is hit. Oh, there goes another! Watch it, dude!
We actually started to yell again, but I don't think he heard it. He saw it first.
The pedestrian is directly in the path of the sliding sedan and leaps out of the way just in the nick of time.
We thought he was a total goner.
But an oncoming car isn't so lucky.
Whoa, that's an accident. Oh!
The skidding car enters the intersection where it collides with a woman in a sedan.
She hit the steering column and her airbag went off. Her front end was nearly a totaled car. It was brand new. She had told me that she had just got it the day before. I understand that she broke her wrist and she broke her nose, and I helped her into the store.
Brian Kraut hopes something can be done about this dangerous intersection before another unlucky driver turns Kraut's business into a drive-through video store. Icy roads were also the cause of a nearly catastrophic accident on Interstate 96 in Livonia, Michigan. 40 million Americans travel the nation's interstates every day, and at no time is it more dangerous than in the winter. Charisse Briscoe nearly met a tragic end on this highway on a cold January morning in 1997. The drama began when the young mother stopped on the side of the road following a minor fender bender.
Someone pulled in front of us and slammed on brakes, and it caused us to run into the back of them and slide up on the embankment.
This was just a prelude to the nightmare to come. On this winter day, the highway is covered with deadly black ice.
Couldn't really tell it was slippery until you hit the brakes.
Soon, Officer Kevin Schultz arrives on the scene.
I was trying to start an accident report, get their information, and get them off of the freeway because it was dangerous down there.
Charisse is upset about the fender bender,
I was pretty shook up about it.
but her day is about to get much worse.
I walked up to her. She was standing between her Cadillac and the freeway, and I asked her when it happened.
About how long ago do you think it happened? 20 minutes ago, maybe?
My back is turned towards oncoming traffic, and all I heard the officer say was, "Watch out."
I noticed that a pickup truck had spun out and hit the median wall on the other side of the freeway. It must have hit another car when changing lanes, sending that vehicle into myself and Miss Briscoe.
I'm standing outside the car talking to a police officer, and wham, I'm hit. It was pretty terrifying.
The out-of-control sedan plows into Charisse's car, hitting both her and Officer Schultz as it ricochets back into traffic.
I just felt like a little rag doll just being tossed in the air.
As Charisse screams in agony, Officer Schultz rushes back to the squad car to summon an ambulance.
Everybody stand up here. 46 space, we need an ambulance out here with the
As terrifying as it may look, the accident left both Charisse and Officer Schultz with only minor injuries.
I just had some bruised ligaments in my left hip. Nothing serious, no broken bones or anything.
I had problems with both knees. Both of my kneecaps went to the side.
I didn't think I would survive it at all.
But they did survive, and Officer Schultz was rewarded with both an official commendation and a new outlook on life.
The accident changed my life, made me feel more positive about my life, made me appreciate the things that are close to me, like my wife, my parents.
Charisse learned a more practical lesson from this terrifying ordeal.
In snowy weather, people need to take their time because it can cause accidents, as the one I was in, and it can also kill someone.
Coming up next, a pedestrian makes a mad dash for his life at a crosswalk in Canada. Plus,
773, all his tires are out.
an escaped convict leads police on a pulse-pounding chase through the streets of Phoenix, Arizona.
773, can I box him into the wall?
If someone didn't intervene, he was going to kill somebody.
That's straight ahead on the world's most dangerous roads. Sometimes, walking is the simplest form of travel. Billions of city dwellers around the world cross busy intersections every day. Usually it happens without incident, but not always. Toronto, Canada. A pedestrian is about to take a walk on the wild side. Watch again. This truck barrels through the intersection, barely missing the fleet-footed young man. First, he dodges a truck that thunders through a red light. Then, has to leap out of the path of a careening car that's been smashed by the truck. Breathless, he lies on the side of the road, having just cheated death twice in a matter of a few seconds.
Crossing the street's the most dangerous thing that you do as a pedestrian. About 5,000 people killed as pedestrians every year in this country. That's quite a few to lose every year.
Despite that grim statistic, Ellen Vanderslice believes there should be more pedestrians and more walking.
We really are a country that doesn't like to walk. We drive as close as we can to everywhere so that we can get right to the door without having to walk too far. And what a lot of people are missing is the magic of walking. And when you do that, all your problems get solved. So I definitely recommend walking to everybody.
Ellen is so passionate about her cause, she's become an advocate for a Portland, Oregon-based group called America Walks.
America Walks is a coalition of 29 groups around the country that are all working on making conditions for walking better in their own communities.
Every year, 92,000 pedestrians are injured by motor vehicles, most often at intersections.
The threat to pedestrians is really from motorists who aren't paying attention.
In recent years, another factor contributing to pedestrian danger is the skyrocketing use of cell phones by drivers.
The trouble with drivers using cell phones from a pedestrian point of view is that it really takes away the driver's attention from what they're doing. And if they're not paying attention at the moment you happen to be crossing the street, well, that's bad news for you.
The good news, says Ellen, is that some cities, like her hometown of San Francisco, have been at the forefront of making streets safer for pedestrians.
They've added some special kinds of signals. They've put curb extensions to shorten up the crosswalks and places for people to wait in the middle of the street, refuges where they can be safe.
Ellen's best safety tip is often the most overlooked.
The best way for a driver to avoid hitting a pedestrian is just to drive slowly all the time.
That point is graphically demonstrated in videotape from an intersection in Finland. Both the driver and the pedestrians assume the other will stop first. And this woman takes one step too many. Incredibly, she doesn't even lose her footing, but merely spins around, thankful she wasn't seriously hurt. Had this accident occurred in the United States, the driver would almost certainly have been ticketed for ignoring the painted crosswalk.
Every state in this country has a law that requires drivers to stop and yield to pedestrians that are in a marked crosswalk. And if they don't yield, they get a ticket or a warning. It's not a very big fine, I'm afraid, not as big as the danger you face as a pedestrian from drivers who fail to yield.
But it's not always the driver who's to blame for pedestrian accidents, especially when someone tries to cross the street without a signal. A woman ignores the light at this intersection in Finland and pays the price. Her body is hurled to the roof of the car, then flung to the pavement 15 feet away. Fortunately, she suffers only minor injuries. But this video offers a startling reminder of the danger facing any pedestrian who ignores the rules of the road. Next, an escaped convict goes on a drug-crazed rampage.
We witnessed him shooting up drugs while he was driving.
Police in Phoenix, Arizona take drastic action to end this deadly pursuit.
Get your hands up! Get your hands up!
Plus, reckless drivers try to beat the train and lose.
It's not the best decision to make, because even if it's a tie, you lose.
That's coming up on the world's most dangerous roads. High-speed pursuits happen every 15 minutes in the United States. Turning peaceful streets and highways into war zones. Mebane, North Carolina. Ordinarily, this sleepy southern town doesn't see a lot of action. But today, it's the site of a high-speed pursuit. One that's about to take a very unexpected turn. Mebane Police Chief Gary Baumgartner vividly recalls the bizarre chase that began when this suspect was spotted driving erratically on Highway 70.
The suspect passed a lot of vehicles on hilltops and in curves, endangering a lot of traffic and civilians.
Once the suspect speeds out of the city limits, something strange begins to unfold.
He slammed on brakes and slowed down.
The driver hits the brakes, literally burning rubber and swerving into oncoming traffic. Suddenly, the driver's door flies open and the suspect hits the pavement.
Instead of stopping the car and jumping out like most people do, he jumped out of the car while it was still rolling, and at that time he bounced down the pavement.
As the suspect tumbles over concrete, the officer barely avoids hitting him.
It's very unusual and be very surprising for any officer in a pursuit situation to have the driver jump out of a moving vehicle like that.
With no driver behind the wheel, the out-of-control car rockets down the interstate, veers across oncoming lanes, and crashes into a guardrail.
He dived out of the vehicle and let the car go on down the road, endangering even more people.
Amazingly, the suspect suffers only a few scratches and still feels feisty enough to try to escape from the officers.
He had some very minor injuries, some scrapes and abrasions off the pavement. Other than that, there was no damage to him whatsoever.
The chief still finds this incident one of the most shocking in his career, not only because the man jumped out of a moving car, but because he survived.
If he'd have jumped out when he was doing 90 miles an hour, it would have been a different story.
"773, can I box him into the wall?"
Imagine you're in the passenger seat of a police car, and this is your view. News cameraman Michael Slee is confronted with this terrifying spectacle one night in Phoenix, Arizona.
There was a big lump in my throat.
He's riding along with Officer Tim Mason of the Arizona Department of Public Safety, shooting footage for a local newscast.
I commonly go out with different law enforcement agencies, literally trying to catch lightning in a bottle.
Suddenly, an all-points bulletin turns a routine patrol into a wild and dangerous manhunt.
They're in pursuit of an armed robbery suspect who is also just committed a carjacking, and apparently he's escaped from prison.
And that was the beginning of probably one of the most exciting chases I've ever been in.
The suspect in the pickup truck is armed and considered extremely dangerous.
If someone didn't intervene, he was going to kill somebody.
After speeding ahead of the fugitive, Officer Mason deploys stop sticks.
They use these stop sticks to deflate the tires. The person driving has to slow down. There's a sharp quill in the stop stick that will puncture the tire, letting the air out slowly so they don't have a blowout and crash.
The spikes hit their target.
Okay, I just spiked the rear right tire of that vehicle. We are now in pursuit.
But the pickup barrels on. now skating on 3 rims.
773, would you advise their units if they move over to the right again, I may be able to spike him again. .773, all his tires are out. Okay, I just spiked his vehicle again. I knocked out the second rear tire. Apparently I didn't get it the first time.
Now, all 4 tires are shredded. But riding on rims doesn't faze this felon. And there's a good reason. Police say both the suspect and his passenger are sky high on a variety of drugs.
But he is pushing all kinds of dope into his wrist right now.
And the only thing more dangerous than an armed robber is an armed robber who's out of his mind.
He just threw out a syringe.
This was a dangerous person. I mean, even though the vehicle's not going fast, you still have a person in there that's hyped up on drugs. You know, who knows what he's going to do.
You got it back under control. He's continuing southbound real slow.
Okay, he's going to lose it right here. There he's going. He's going. There he goes. Oh.
But the suspect somehow maintains control until now. Police have kept their distance, but then the driver makes a move that forces them to close in.
He's getting on the freeway the wrong way.
Officer Mason has no choice. He has to take drastic action.
773, can I box him into the wall?
He gets the go-ahead to stop the drug-crazed suspect in his tracks.
I knew at that moment we were going head-to-head with this guy.
Now free to catch up to the suspect, Officer Mason utilizes the pit maneuver. His cruiser pushes the vehicle to the shoulder, and another cruiser pins in the driver.
With all the spark and smokes coming up over the hood, I thought his vehicle was actually going to roll.
Get your hands up! Get your hands up! Don't you move!
For Michael Sleep, the takedown is the most frightening part of the whole chase.
Knowing that at any time he could reach down and point a gun and shoot either one of us, yeah, that was a scary moment.
Both suspects are taken into custody without further incident. Fortunately, no one is seriously injured. But high-speed pursuits like this account for an average of 300 deaths per year, posing one of the greatest threats to travelers on America's roads. Coming up, an elderly man is trapped in the path of a thundering locomotive. Plus, if you think it's okay to run a red light, then watch closely.
Oh boy, here we go. Go! Oh no! Oh no!
Find out how police are putting a stop to this deadly violation. Next on the world's most dangerous roads. Every year, drivers who run red lights are responsible for more than 1.8 million auto accidents worldwide. This collision in Colombia is just one example. A taxi runs a red light and takes a hit from a bus. Landing in the median, the unharmed passengers in the car are swarmed by concerned citizens. Red lights may be the international signal to stop, but not everyone is catching on. At an intersection in Queensland, Australia, the light is turned red, but one driver is apparently colorblind. When this driver flagrantly runs the red light, the car can't slow down in time to avoid a crash. The lawbreaker is sideswiped and nearly rolls over, but recovers in time to drive up on the median and speed away from the wreck, making this a nasty case of hit and run. Both of these red light accidents resulted in minor injuries. But as you're about to see, the outcome can often be much worse. Oceanside, California. In the middle of rush hour, a news helicopter follows police officers pursuing a black car in a high-speed chase.
He's still kind of courteous, so at this point it doesn't look like there's too much desperation. Naturally, he doesn't want to be caught.
But this seemingly routine chase is about to take a horrific turn.
Oh boy, here we go. Boom! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no!
Jason Austell is the traffic reporter flying overhead in a news helicopter.
We were originally launched out on a different chase that was coming down the coastal commute down 5, and it was coming from Orange County, and that one ended up in the Camp Pendleton area. And no sooner had that one ended than our assignment desk said, wait, we've got one coming out of Riverside, which is very rare. I mean, 2 chases right at once.
And the suspect does not slow down.
You've been, cutting people off, anything like that. No, not that I've seen.
He was driving speeds in excess of 80, 90 miles an hour. Occasionally, he'd get over 100. Oftentimes, he'd use the shoulder. He wasn't trying to hurt anybody, it didn't seem like. He was just trying to get down the freeway as fast as he could. He had plenty of people after him, that's for sure.
For a moment, it looks like the police have this runaway driver under control.
Okay, they're telling him to stop. Good, Nicola. Very good.
But the driver of the black car has other plans.
Now he doesn't want to stop. Well, they've given him a chance. They have given this guy a chance just to surrender. It's peaceful. You didn't see any weapons drawn there, just a highway patrolman saying, step out, let's talk about this. No, he's going to take a left turn. No, he's going to go into Oceanside.
Watch again.
One of the CHP officers got out of his car, walked in front of it over to the side of his car, and pointed, get out of the car. And the guy just took off. He gave him every option, to just step out of the car and end it, but this guy had to floor it, and I was very surprised.
This is a residential area here.
The suspect makes a drastic decision. He turns onto the Pacific Coast Highway that runs through the center of Oceanside.
I mean, when you get into a chase situation, you're thinking, this thing is gonna end, and how is it going to end? But I never, ever expected anything like I saw that day.
Jason watches helplessly as the suspect barrels through a red light.
Oh boy, here we go. Boom! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! I'm sorry. Oh no! Oh no! This is terrible. This is in Oceanside. This chase has just ended. Boy, that's tough. I'm speechless. I'm sorry. Oh man.
The light was just turning red. As it turned red, that's when I realized something bad was about to happen, because if you look at the shot, you'll see the cross traffic. It comes in from the south, from the left side of your screen. That was the first thing I saw. I saw the cars pulling into the intersection, knowing that they had no idea what was about to cross their path.
The black car blows through the red light and smashes into the unsuspecting drivers.
It was like an explosion in the intersection, and from then on, it was just so surreal. It was very emotional because I thought for sure somebody had been killed.
Take another look. First, the black car hits a white Jeep, then slams into the red truck crossing in front. The force of the crash sends the truck careening into a car stopped at the light. But drivers are not the only victims here. An innocent pedestrian crossing the street is nearly hit by the flying wreckage. Moments later, the police are on the scene.
Okay, now we've got the guns drawn, and rightfully so. What a horrific crash.
Well, when the dust started to settle, it was a case of guns being drawn. All the police officers were drawing down on this guy that they were chasing. But it was very apparent to anybody who was watching it that this wasn't somebody who was going to be in any condition to put up a fight.
Incredibly, the innocent drivers caught in this tangled mass of metal sustain only minor injuries.
Okay, it looks like the driver of the truck is out. I'm hoping that's the driver. He's okay. I personally haven't seen anybody come out of the Nissan 200 there. Guns are drawn here. We got somebody looking out the back window of the car that was being chased. They're helping somebody out of the Jeep, the white Jeep right here at the top of your screen. Okay, and we're walking.
But the driver of the black car suffers serious spinal injuries, leaving him confined to a wheelchair.
Not only had he caused that accident at that intersection, but he also suffered the consequences of it as well.
Jason has witnessed other red light accidents, but none so terrifying as this one.
Intersections are dangerous anyway. Most accidents happen at intersections, and the running of red lights, it's basic. If you run a red light, you will go against the very rules that govern that intersection. And as you can see, the results in this case were just nearly catastrophic.
Most of us have run a red light at least once, and some of us have suffered the consequences.
Red light running in the United States is a very dangerous situation. The accidents caused by red light running exceed over 200,000 a year.
It causes a lot of traffic collisions and a lot of injuries throughout the U.S.
Travelers are more likely to be injured in crashes involving red light running than any other type of collision. Surprisingly, increased police presence isn't the answer to this problem.
It's extremely dangerous for police officers to go after red light runners because the officer also has to run that same red light.
Sergeant Denny Jenner supervises the Red Light Violations Program in Irvine, California. This city in suburban Orange County has taken a progressive approach in dealing with red light runners.
If law enforcement is to keep up with what's going on out in the world, we have to become more technologically advanced.
The city of Irvine utilizes a high-tech method of catching red light violators. It's called crossing guard.
There's the camera right there. And then we have the 2 lighting houses for nighttime photos.
It uses cameras mounted at each intersection to record red light runners on digital video.
What it does is it tracks the vehicles as it's approaching the intersections, and it can predict if a red light runner is going to occur. And there's a computer at the roadside that the camera actually interacts with, and it tells the computer to record the violation.
Violators are identified by both their license plates and their faces. The police department then issues citations by mail.
What's unique about this situation is that we're very proactive. If someone says it's not me or I didn't run a red light, we actually invite them into the police department to actually see their video before we go to court. It saves a lot of court time. 3 times we had someone actually say it wasn't them. They came into the police department, and all 3 times was, how much do I owe?
Preserving the incident on video has other benefits as well.
The video enables the officer or the judge to see the entire context of the violation. For example, if an ambulance or an emergency vehicle was coming up behind the vehicle and that's what caused the vehicle to run the light, you would actually see that in the video because, again, you have an instant replay of the entire violation.
We had one judge actually say it's like me standing on the corner and watching the violation as it occurs.
Catching lawbreakers isn't all this technology does. When a driver runs a red light, the sensors signal the other lights to remain red so that other cars don't collide with a violator.
If they enter during an all-red phase, the light is actually extended an additional amount of time so that no other vehicles actually enter that intersection.
Statistics show that this brand of cutting-edge law enforcement is working.
Red light cameras in general have been proven to show a reduction of at least 40% in red light running violations at an intersection within a year.
This technology is expected to be implemented in 20 cities within the next year, and that suits Sergeant Jenner just fine.
We just want people to drive very carefully because if we can avoid one traffic collision, that may just be that life that we save.
Coming up, impatient drivers risk their lives trying to outrun a speeding train.
You're 40 times more likely to die in a collision with a train than in a collision with a regular 4-wheel vehicle.
Next on the world's most dangerous roads. A traveler is 40 times more likely to die in a crash involving a train than in a crash with another car. In Baton Rouge, Louisiana, news reporter Jeff Jackson decides to do a story on this very topic. While shooting his story, he takes a ride on a train. What happens next drives home his point about the dangers of railroad crossings in a way he never could have imagined.
What we wanted to accomplish was to bring some awareness to the public of the percentage and the rates of car and train collisions in Louisiana. And for me, it was shocking because you see this all the time on videos and other stories, but you never think that you're going to be in the middle of it.
Betsy Williams was riding the train with Jeff Jackson when the collision occurred.
At the time, we were just going through. I was taking the news crew through to see what drivers were, what behavior they had at the railroad crossing.
Like this semi-driver who swerves out of his lane to avoid the crossing barrier. Ironically, Betsy is with Operation Lifesaver, a group that advocates more education about car and railroad collisions.
Operation Lifesaver is a nonprofit program that's dedicated to eliminating fatalities and injuries at highway rail grade crossings and on railroad rights of way.
This crash test footage shows how easily a freight train can demolish a passenger car.
There's a 4,000 to 1 weight ratio between that train and your personal vehicle. It's the same weight ratio as your personal vehicle running over a 12-ounce aluminum can. You run over the can, say in your driveway, and you knew you hit something, but you're not exactly sure what it was.
Often, these deadly collisions occur because drivers have seriously miscalculated their ability to beat the train.
Do not misjudge the speed and distance of a train. There's an optical illusion where large transportation is concerned. If you pull up to a railroad crossing and see a train and it looks like it's moving slowly, its size may fool you.
That warning is echoed by Baton Rouge police officer Don Kelly.
It's not that uncommon to see this occur, even with all of the various signal lights at the railroad crossings. People still just have a tendency to think they can get across those tracks faster than a train can come.
You're 40 times more likely to die in a collision with a train than in a collision with a regular four-wheel vehicle.
Well, the worst possible scenario is fatality, sometimes whole families that have been wiped out, and that is very tragic and very preventable thing to see.
Tragically, these collisions occur at a very alarming rate.
Every 2 hours, either a collision between a train and a vehicle or a train and a pedestrian.
In this case, even after the car slams into the locomotive, the train can't stop.
It takes those trains a long time to stop. They just don't stop on the button, you know.
It takes a fully loaded freight train traveling about 55 miles an hour, 1.5 miles to come to a complete stop. That's 18 football fields.
With every foot the mangled vehicle is propelled forward, the odds of the driver's survival grow slimmer. This looks like an accident no one could possibly live through.
He's okay.
But incredibly, the driver suffers only a few cuts and still feels feisty enough to throw a temper tantrum.
He just kind of went into a tantrum, you know. I guess he was still in shock as much as he was angry, you know.
One look at this mutilated sedan shows how easily this story might have had a tragic ending.
The impact, fortunately for him, came on the passenger side. He was headed westbound. Had he been headed eastbound and the impact occurred on the driver's side, he probably would have sustained much more serious injuries or perhaps even been killed.
At the very least, this driver sustained the scare of a lifetime.
He probably felt very terrified. Because first of all, not knowing when the train was going to be able to stop, probably wondering, is this car going to flip over, and would this train be running over the car? So I would imagine he was very, very scared at the time.
Like many other motorists who collide with trains, this man was in a hurry.
The gentleman stated to us that he was running late. In fact, he was running late for a court appearance.
And he told me that he thought that he could make it through the crossing before the train got there. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case.
Since drivers are held legally liable for these accidents, this man will probably have to make many more court appearances.
If there is property damage, which there certainly will be, if there are injuries, which there quite likely will be, you as the driver of that vehicle are going to be the one ultimately responsible for them.
This impatient motorist was lucky to survive, but other daredevil drivers won't be so fortunate.
It's not the best decision to make, to try to beat a train, because even if it's a tie, you lose.
Hinsdale, Illinois. Take a close look at the van on the right. Now you see it. Now you don't. Collisions like this happen every 100 minutes. But thanks to an incredibly selfless act, the driver of this van escapes just seconds before a certain death. This bedroom community outside Chicago relies heavily on trains for transportation to and from the city. They're filled with commuters like Bill Moore, a stockbroker who one evening found himself in the role of local hero. Driving home one night, Bill spots an elderly man taking a wrong turn at a railroad crossing and driving down the tracks.
He was kind of out of his element, and he just got disoriented.
He traveled down the railroad tracks for approximately 300 yards when his car became impaled on the tracks and wasn't able to drive anymore.
Although other drivers witnessed this potentially fatal mistake, the only one to stop is Bill Moore.
I think the driver is very lucky that Mr. Moore, who was the passerby, saw him at the time.
Bill Moore begs the reluctant old man to abandon his van.
He balked a little bit because he was trying to get his van off the track at the time. I said, you're just going to have to get out.
At that moment, Bill sees the lights of an approaching train.
I really just knew he was in trouble and I had to get him out of there. And that was pretty much all I was thinking about.
Though police had been called to the scene, they can't stop the oncoming locomotive. Bill pulls the elderly man from the van and rushes him to safety, and not a moment too soon. A powerful train slams into the van.
The van was pushed approximately 300 yards down the tracks and demolished.
Where he was sitting was totally crunched. He wouldn't have survived.
Officers reviewing this tape were amazed at how close Bill and the man came to a gruesome death.
We counted there was only 7 seconds between the time the passerby, Mr. Moore, pulled the driver of the van out prior to the collision.
Bill Moore's act of courage never fails to amaze anyone viewing this incredible video.
I think it was pretty selfless what he did, risking his own life trying to rescue a perfect stranger.
But Bill remains humble about his actions that night.
Once in a while you can step out and make a difference. So I was glad I was able to do that for him.
Danger looms at every turn on the world's highways and byways. Statistics say that 99 out of every 100 drivers will be involved in an accident in their lifetime. And seconds and inches could be the difference between life and death. On the world's most dangerous roads,